That night, a young woman was forced to marry a blind old man to save her dying mother, but what she discovered behind his closed door would change her life forever. She thought she was walking into a life of sacrifice, into a marriage without love, without choice, but nothing was as it seemed. The man she feared, the house she entered, the truth she was told, all of it was hiding something deeper, something dangerous, something no one had prepared her for. Watch until the end because we reveal the secret. But first, please write in the comments where you are from. May God bless those of you who have liked and subscribed to this channel. The night was heavy with silence, but inside the small, worn-out house at the edge of the neighborhood, nothing felt quiet. The air carried tension, thick and pressing, as if even the walls could hear what was about to happen. A single dim bulb flickered above, casting long shadows across the cracked floor. Outside, the distant hum of Lagos traffic mixed with the occasional barking of stray dogs, but inside, all that existed was fear. Amara stood near the doorway, her fingers trembling as they held the edge of her wrapper. Her breathing was shallow, uneven, like someone trying not to cry but failing. She had sensed something was wrong the moment she returned home that evening. Her mother had not greeted her with the usual tired smile. There had been no small talk, no questions about her day. Just silence, heavy and cold. Mama Ngozi sat on the old wooden chair in the corner, her back slightly bent, her eyes fixed on the ground. She looked smaller than usual, like the weight of the world had pressed her down. The lines on her face were deeper tonight, her lips dry, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. Amara took a step closer. The floor creaked under her feet, breaking the silence for a brief moment. Mama looked up slowly. Her eyes were red, not from sleep, but from tears that had already been shed. "My daughter," she said quietly, her voice shaking in a way Amara had never heard before. "Sit down." Amara did not sit. Something inside her refused. Her heart began to pound harder, faster, like a drum warning her to run. Instead, she stood still, staring at her mother, waiting for words that felt too heavy to come out. Mama swallowed, then looked away again. For a moment, it seemed like she would say nothing. Then, finally, she spoke. "You know things have not been easy for us." Amara nodded slowly. She knew. She had always known. Ever since her father died, everything had changed. The small savings he left behind had disappeared within months. Bills had piled up. Food had become something they could not always afford. And her mother had grown weaker, her health declining with each passing day. "I am trying, Mama," Amara said softly. "I am working every day. I will do more. I can take another job." Mama shook her head quickly, almost in panic. No. This is not something you can fix like that." Amara felt her chest tighten. The words sounded final, like a door closing. "Then tell me, Mama. What is it?" There was a long pause. Mama's lips parted slightly, but no sound came out. Her hands trembled as she rubbed them together. She looked like someone standing at the edge of a cliff, afraid to jump but knowing there was no way back. Then she said it. "You must marry him." The words fell into the room like a stone dropped into still water, sending shockwaves through everything. Amara blinked, once, twice, as if she had not heard correctly. "Marry who?" Mama did not answer immediately. Instead, she reached for the small cloth on her lap and twisted it tightly in her hands. "The man who will pay our debt." Amara's heart skipped, then slammed hard against her chest. "Debt." She took a step back, her mind racing. "What debt? What are you talking about?" Mama finally looked at her again, and this time, the tears returned, sliding slowly down her cheeks. "We owe money, Amara. A lot of money." "How much?" Mama hesitated, then whispered the number. Amara felt the ground beneath her shift. It was not just a number. It was something impossible, something they could never repay even if they worked every day for the rest of their lives. How did this happen? Mama's shoulders shook as she tried to explain, her words broken, uneven. Hospital bills. Medicine. Borrowed money. Promises made when there was no other choice. And someone who had been willing to help, but not for free. Amara listened, but her mind was already spinning in another direction. "And this man? The one I have to marry. Who is he?" Mama hesitated again. This time, the silence felt even heavier. "He is a respected man." "That is not what I asked." Mama closed her eyes briefly, then forced the truth out. "He is old." Amara's breath caught. How old? Mama did not give a number. She did not need to. Old enough to be your father. The room seemed to close in around Amara. The walls felt closer, the air thinner. No. The word came out before she could stop it. No, Mama. I cannot do that. Mama stood up suddenly, her frail body shaking as she grabbed Amara's hands. You must, my daughter. If you do not, they will take this house. They will take everything. We will have nothing. I might not even survive this. Amara pulled her hands away, her head shaking over and over. There must be another way. There has to be. There is not. The certainty in Mama's voice made Amara freeze. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. Then Amara asked the question that had been sitting at the back of her mind, the one she had been afraid to ask. Does he know me? Mama hesitated. He has seen you. Amara's stomach turned. And he agreed to this. Mama nodded slowly. Yes. Amara felt something break inside her. Not loud, not sudden, but quiet and deep, like a crack spreading through glass. What kind of man would agree to marry someone like this? Mama's voice dropped to a whisper. A powerful one. Amara looked away, her eyes filling with tears she refused to let fall. And there is something else, Mama added. Amara did not want to hear more, but the words came anyway. He is blind. Amara turned sharply, her eyes wide. Blind. Yes. The word hung in the air, strange and heavy. For a moment, Amara did not know how to feel. Relief did not come. Instead, confusion settled in. Why would a blind man want to marry me? Mama shook her head slowly. I do not know. But he has made his condition clear. He will clear our debt. He will take care of us. But you must become his wife. Amara felt her legs weaken. She reached for the wall, steadying herself. This cannot be real. But it was. Every second of it. Mama stepped closer again, her voice softer now, almost pleading. My daughter, sometimes in life, we do not choose our path. The path chooses us. Amara closed her eyes tightly. The words felt like chains wrapping around her. Outside, the wind picked up slightly, rustling the leaves, as if the world itself was whispering something she could not understand. When is the wedding? Mama hesitated, then answered quietly. In 3 days. Amara's eyes snapped open. 3 days. Yes. The room spun. Everything felt too fast, too sudden. I cannot do this. Mama reached for her again, her grip firm despite her weakness. You can. You must. Amara pulled away, shaking her head, her chest rising and falling rapidly. No. No, I need time. I need to think. There is no time. The finality in Mama's voice echoed through the room. Amara turned and walked toward the door, her steps unsteady. She needed air. She needed space. She needed something that did not feel like a trap. As she stepped outside, the night air hit her face, cool but not enough to calm the storm inside her. She looked up at the dark sky, her vision blurred by tears she could no longer hold back. Her life had just changed. Not slowly. Not gently. But all at once. And somewhere, in a place she had never seen, a man she did not know was waiting for her. A blind old man. Or at least, that was what she had been told. Amara wrapped her arms around herself, her body shaking as the reality settled in. In 3 days, she would no longer belong to herself. She would belong to him. The morning came too quickly, as if the night had refused to give Amara enough time to breathe. Sleep had not come easily, and when it did, it brought no rest. Her mind had been running the entire night, replaying her mother's words again and again, until they no longer sounded like sentences but like echoes trapped inside her head. You must marry him. She sat on the thin mattress as the first light of dawn crept into the room through the small window. The neighborhood was already waking up. Voices drifted in from outside. Women calling out to each other. Pots clanging. The distant sound of a generator coughing to life. Life was continuing, as if nothing had changed, as if the world had not just shifted beneath her feet. But for Amara, everything had changed. She pressed her palms against her face, trying to steady herself, trying to push away the weight sitting on her chest. It did not move. It only settled deeper. From the other room, she could hear her mother coughing. It was a dry, painful sound, one that seemed to pull something out of her with every breath. Amara lowered her hand slowly and stared at the wall in front of her. That sound alone was enough to remind her why this was happening. She stood up and walked out quietly. Mama Ngozi was seated again in the same chair, a small cup of water in her hand. Her eyes looked tired, even more than the night before. There was a kind of quiet acceptance in her face now, like someone who had already made peace with something difficult. Amara paused for a moment before stepping closer. "You did not sleep," Mama said softly without looking at her. Amara shook her head, even though she knew her mother could not see it clearly. "Neither did you." Mama gave a small, weak smile. "Sleep is not for people like us these days." Amara sat down slowly on the wooden stool opposite her. For a while, neither of them spoke. The silence between them was no longer shocking. It had become something else. Something heavy but familiar. Then Amara spoke, her voice low but steady. "Tell me everything." Momo's fingers tightened around the cup. "There is nothing more to tell." "There is. I need to understand how we got here." Momo sighed deeply, the kind of sigh that came from somewhere far inside. "It started months ago. When I first fell sick, we had no money. The hospital would not treat me without payment. I went to your uncle." Amora's expression hardened slightly. "Uncle Boko." Momo nodded. "He said he would help. He gave us money. At first, it was small amounts. But then the bills kept coming. Medicine. Tests. More visits. Each time, he said not to worry." Amara leaned forward slightly. "And you believed him?" Mama looked down. "I had no choice." Amara did not respond. She understood that part. When there was no choice, people held on to whatever was offered, even if it came with hidden chains. "Then what happened?" Mama hesitated, then continued. "After some time, he came back and said the money had grown. That there was interest. That we owed more than we could ever repay. I begged him for more time, but he said there was another way." Amara already knew what was coming, but she let her mother say it. "He told me about the man. He said the man was looking for a wife. He said if you agreed, everything would be settled." Amara felt her jaw tighten. "So he sold me." Mama looked up quickly, her eyes filled with pain. "No. I did not sell you. I was trying to save you. To save us." Amara let out a quiet breath, shaking her head slightly. "It feels the same." The words were not loud, but they landed heavily. Mama did not argue. She simply looked away. There was a long pause. Then Amara asked, her voice calmer now. "Have you met him?" Mama nodded slowly. "Once." "And?" Mama struggled for the right words. "He is not what I expected." "What does that mean?" "He is quiet. He speaks carefully. He does not shout. He does not act like other men with power." Amara frowned slightly. "That does not mean anything." Mama nodded. "I know. But there is something about him." Amara leaned back slightly, crossing her arms. "And he is really blind." Mama hesitated, then nodded again. "Yes. He did not look at me once. His eyes, they did not follow anything." Amara looked away, thinking. For a moment, a strange thought crossed her mind. If he was truly blind, then what did he see when he thought of her? Did he imagine her? Did he care? Or was she just a solution to a problem? "Why me?" Mama shook her head. "I asked the same question. Your uncle said the man does not choose like others. He said the man has his reasons." Amara let out a soft, bitter laugh. "Of course he does." The sound of footsteps outside interrupted them. Someone was approaching the house. The steps were confident, unhurried. Amara turned her head toward the door. A shadow appeared, then the door creaked open without a knock. Uncle Boko stepped inside. He was dressed neatly, as always. Clean shirt. Polished shoes. A small smile on his face that never quite reached his eyes. "Oh, my family," he said, spreading his arms slightly. "How are we this morning?" Amara stood up immediately, her body stiff. "Why are you here?" Boko chuckled softly. Is that how you greet someone who has helped you? Amara did not respond. Her eyes stayed locked on him. Mama shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Boko, please. But he raised a hand slightly, silencing her. It is fine. The girl has spirit. I like that. He turned his attention back to Amara. I came to make sure everything is ready. Time is not on our side. Amara took a step closer, her voice firm. You had no right. Boko tilted his head slightly. No right to what? To decide my life like this. He smiled again, that same calm, controlled smile. I did not decide your life. I gave you an opportunity. Amara's hands clenched at her sides. This is not an opportunity. Boko's eyes hardened slightly. It is, whether you see it or not. You are about to enter a life most people can only dream of. Wealth. Security. Power. Amara shook her head. At what cost? Boko stepped closer, his voice lowering. At the cost of saving your mother's life. The words hit exactly where he intended. Amara froze. For a moment, she said nothing. Boko leaned in slightly. If you walk away, everything falls apart. The debt remains. The house is gone. And your mother, he paused, letting the silence finish the sentence. Mama let out a weak sob. Please, Amara. Amara closed her eyes briefly. The pressure closed in around her again, stronger than before. Boko straightened up. The wedding preparations have already begun. The ceremony will be held in Lagos. It will be traditional. Respectable. Amara opened her eyes slowly. 3 days. Yes. She nodded once, more to herself than to him. Boko studied her for a moment, then gave a satisfied nod. Good. That is what I like to see. Acceptance. Amara did not respond. Boko turned toward the door. A car will come for you tomorrow. You will be taken for fitting and preparations. Everything will be handled. He paused at the doorway, then looked back. And Amara. She did not look at him. Do not try to run. It will not end well. With that, he stepped outside and closed the door behind him. The room fell silent again. Amara stood there, her body still, her mind racing. Momo's quiet crying filled the space. After a while, Amara walked slowly back to the stool and sat down. She stared at the floor, her thoughts moving in circles. Run. The word came to her suddenly, strong and clear. She could leave. She could disappear. She could start somewhere new. But then she heard her mother's cough again. And the word faded. She was trapped. Not by walls. But by love. By responsibility. By a choice that did not feel like a choice at all. Amara lifted her head slowly, her eyes no longer filled with panic, but something else. Something quieter. Something heavier. If this was the path placed before her, then she would walk it. Not because she wanted to. But because she had to. Outside, the sun had fully risen now, casting light across the small house. A new day had begun. And it was carrying her closer to a life she did not choose. Closer to a man she had never met. A blind old man. Or at least, that was still what she believed. The next day did not feel like a new beginning. It felt like a countdown. Every hour that passed seemed louder than usual, heavier, as if time itself wanted Amara to feel every second slipping away from her. The small house that had always felt like a place of comfort now felt too tight, too quiet, too full of thoughts she could not escape. Amara woke up before the sun rose. She did not need anyone to call her. Sleep had become something distant, something her body could no longer fully accept. She sat on her mattress for a long time, her eyes open, staring into the dim light as shadows slowly faded around her. For a moment, she tried to imagine what her life would have been if none of this had happened. She thought of simple things. Waking up, going to work, coming back home, helping her mother, maybe laughing at something small. A life that was not perfect, but at least it was hers. Now, everything felt borrowed. She stood up slowly and wrapped her scarf around her head. The house was quiet. Mama Ngozi was still asleep, or at least pretending to be. Amara did not disturb her. She stepped outside, letting the cool morning air touch her face. The street was almost empty. A few early traders were setting up their goods. A woman pushed a wheelbarrow past her, humming softly to herself. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster crowed, as if reminding the world that morning had arrived whether anyone was ready or not. Amara took a deep breath, but it did not calm her. She did not know how long she stood there before the sound of an engine broke the silence. A black car turned into the narrow street, moving slowly, carefully avoiding the uneven ground. It did not belong here. Everything about it stood out. The shine of the body. The smooth movement. The quiet power in the way it approached. Amara's heart tightened. It had come. The car stopped in front of the house. The engine went silent, but the presence of the vehicle seemed to fill the entire space. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the door opened. A man stepped out. He was tall, dressed in a simple but well-fitted suit. His posture was straight, his movements calm and controlled. He looked around briefly before his eyes settled on Amara. "Good morning," he said. His voice was firm but respectful. Amara nodded slightly, unable to speak at first. "I am Tond," he continued. "I work for Chief Adewale. I am here to take you." The name settled into her mind like something heavy. Chief Adewale. So that was his name. Amara swallowed slowly. "Now." Tond nodded. "Yes. There is much to prepare." Amara hesitated for a moment, then turned back toward the house. She stepped inside quietly. Mama Ngozi was awake now, sitting up on the mattress, watching her. "He is here," Amara said softly. Mama nodded, her eyes already filled with emotion. "Come here." Amara moved closer, kneeling beside her. Mama reached out, placing her hands gently on Amara's face, as if trying to memorize every detail. "My daughter," she said quietly, her voice trembling. "You are strong. Stronger than you think." Amara closed her eyes briefly, leaning into her mother's touch. "I will be fine," she whispered, even though she did not believe it. Mama nodded slowly. "You will not be alone." The words were meant to comfort, but they did not reach deep enough. Amara stood up, adjusting her wrapper. "I will come back." Mama did not answer immediately. Instead, she pulled Amara into a tight embrace, holding her longer than usual, as if she did not want to let go. Then she whispered softly, "Go, before it becomes harder." Amara stepped back, her eyes lingering for a moment before she turned and walked out. Ton was waiting by the car. He opened the door for her without saying anything. Amara hesitated for a second, then stepped inside. The door closed behind her with a soft click. And just like that, she was no longer in control of where she was going. The car moved forward, leaving the small house behind. Amara turned her head slightly, watching as the place she had known all her life slowly disappeared from view. The streets changed as they drove further. The familiar turned into unfamiliar. The simple turned into something else. They drove in silence for a long time. Amara glanced at Ton through the front mirror. He seemed focused, his eyes on the road, his expression neutral. "What is he like?" she asked suddenly. Ton did not look back immediately. "Who?" "Chief Adewale." There was a brief pause before Ton answered. "He is a good man." Amara frowned slightly. "That is what everyone says about people they work for." Ton allowed a small smile to form. "It is also true." Amara leaned back slightly. Why would a man like him agree to this? Ton's hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel, but his voice remained calm. Chief Adewale does not do anything without reason. That did not answer her question. Amara looked out the window again. The buildings grew taller as they entered a different part of the city. Roads became smoother. Cars became more expensive. Everything looked cleaner, more organized. This was not her world. After some time, the car slowed down. They passed through large gates that opened automatically, revealing a long driveway lined with trees. The house at the end was not just big. It was something else entirely. It stood tall, wide, with a presence that made everything around it seem smaller. Amara felt her breath catch. This is where he lives. The car came to a stop. Ton stepped out first, then opened her door. We are here. Amara stepped out slowly, her eyes taking in everything around her. The air felt different here. Quieter. Controlled. Before she could say anything, the front door of the mansion opened. Two staff members stepped out, standing on either side as if waiting. And then, behind them, a figure appeared. He moved slowly, carefully. An older man. His hair was gray, neatly trimmed. His clothes were simple but expensive. His face was calm, almost unreadable. And his eyes. They did not focus. They did not move with intention. They stared ahead, unfixed. Amara felt her chest tighten. So it was true. He was blind. The man stopped a few steps away from her. For a moment, there was silence. Then he spoke. Amara. Her name in his voice felt strange, like he had said it many times before even though this was the first. Welcome. Amara did not respond immediately. She watched him carefully. His posture. His stillness. The way he held himself. He did not look weak. He did not look lost. He looked in control. I hope your journey was not difficult, he continued. Amara found her voice. It was fine. He nodded slightly. Good. There was a pause. Then he took a small step forward. You may be wondering why you are here. Amara let out a soft breath. I already know why. A faint smile touched his lips. Do you? Amara held his gaze, even though his eyes did not meet hers. I am here to become your wife? The words felt heavy, even as she said them. He nodded slowly. Yes. Silence followed. Then he added quietly. But there is more to this than you think. Amara's brows pulled together slightly. What does that mean? He did not answer immediately. Instead, he turned his head slightly, as if listening to something only he could hear. You will understand in time. Amara felt a flicker of frustration. Time was not something she had asked for. Ton stepped forward slightly. Sir, everything is ready. The man nodded. Take her inside. Then he turned back toward Amara. Rest. You will need it. And just like that, he stepped away, guided gently by one of the staff members. Amara stood still, watching him go. Something about him did not feel simple. Something about him did not match what she had expected. Ton gestured toward the house. This way. Amara followed slowly. As she stepped into the mansion, the doors closing behind her, a strange feeling settled deep inside her chest. This place held secrets. And somehow, she had just walked straight into them. The mansion did not feel like a home. It felt like a place where everything had a purpose, where nothing existed without reason. Even the silence inside it was different. It was not empty. It was controlled. Amara walked behind Ton, her steps slow, careful, as her eyes moved across the wide hallway. The floors were polished so clean they reflected light like water. The walls were decorated with large paintings, each one telling a story she could not understand. Everything looked expensive, but none of it felt warm. She held her wrapper tightly as they moved deeper into the house. A woman appeared from one of the side corridors. She was dressed neatly, her posture straight, her face calm. Welcome, she said. My name is Kemi. I will be assisting you. Amara nodded slightly, still taking everything in. This way, Kemi added, turning gently. Amara followed her, leaving Ton behind. The hallway seemed endless. Every turn led to another space, another door, another quiet corner that felt too perfect to be real. Finally, they reached a large room. Kemi opened the door. This will be your room. Amara stepped inside. The room was bigger than her entire house. A large bed stood in the center, covered in clean white sheets. There was a wardrobe, a dressing table, and a balcony that overlooked the front of the mansion. Everything was arranged perfectly, like no one had ever used it before. Amara stood still, unsure of where to place herself in a space like this. If you need anything, you can call me, Kemi said gently. There are clothes prepared for you. Today will be busy. Amara turned slightly. Busy. Kemi nodded. Yes. The wedding is tomorrow. Amara felt her breath pause. Tomorrow. The word echoed in her mind. Everything was moving faster than she could catch up with. Kemi walked toward the wardrobe and opened it. Inside were dresses. Many of them. Different colors, different styles, all new. You will be fitted today. There will be preparations. Guests will begin arriving later. Amara stepped closer slowly, her fingers brushing against one of the fabrics. It was soft, nothing like what she was used to. All of this felt unreal. Kemi turned back to her. You should freshen up. We will begin soon. Amara nodded quietly. Kemi gave a small smile before leaving the room, closing the door softly behind her. And just like that, Amara was alone. She stood there for a long time. The silence pressed in again, but this time it felt different. It was not the silence of poverty. It was the silence of something else. Something controlled. Something hidden. Amara walked toward the balcony and pushed the door open. Outside, the sun was high now, casting bright light across the compound. The gates stood tall, guarded. Cars moved in and out slowly. Workers walked around with purpose. This place was alive, but it did not feel free. Amara rested her hands on the railing. This is my life now. The thought came quietly, but it stayed. She closed her eyes for a moment. No. Not yet. Not completely. There was still something inside her that refused to accept it fully. But time was not waiting. A knock came on the door. Amara turned. Come in. Kemi entered again, followed by two other women carrying bags and boxes. It is time, Kemi said. The next few hours passed like a blur. Amara was moved from one room to another. Measurements were taken. Dresses were held against her body. Voices spoke around her, but most of the words did not stay in her mind. Stand here. Turn. Lift your arm. Sit. Everything felt mechanical, like she was no longer a person but something being prepared. At some point, they sat her down in front of a mirror. One of the women began working on her hair. Another prepared makeup. Amara watched her reflection slowly change. The girl staring back at her began to look different. More polished. More refined. But her eyes stayed the same. Heavy. Uncertain. At one moment, she caught herself staring too long. Is that really me? The thought lingered. Kemi noticed. You look beautiful, she said softly. Amara did not respond. Beauty did not feel important right now. Time continued to move. By the time everything was done, the sun had begun to lower. Kemi stepped back, observing her. You are ready for tomorrow. Tomorrow. The word came again. Amara stood slowly. Her body felt tired, but her mind was still running. Where is he? She asked quietly. Kemi paused for a moment. The chief. Amara nodded. Kemi glanced toward the door. He is in his study. He does not usually come out during preparations. Amara hesitated. Can I see him? Kemi seemed slightly surprised. Now. Amara nodded. Kemi considered it, then gave a small nod. I will inform him. A few minutes later, Amara found herself walking down another corridor, this one quieter than the others. Kemi stopped in front of a large wooden door. Wait here. Amara nodded. Kemi knocked gently, then stepped inside. The door closed. Amara stood alone again. Her heart began to beat faster. She did not know why she wanted to see him. Maybe she needed to understand something. Maybe she needed to feel something real. The door opened again. Kemi stepped out. You may go in. Amara took a breath, then stepped forward. The room was dimly lit. Books lined the walls. A large desk stood in the center. The air smelled faintly of wood and something deeper, something old. And there he was. Chief Adewale sat in a chair, facing slightly away. He did not turn immediately. Amara stepped closer, her footsteps soft against the floor. For a moment, she said nothing. Then she spoke. You wanted to see me. He turned his head slowly. Or perhaps, you wanted to see me. His voice was calm, steady. Amara stopped a few steps away. I just wanted to understand. He nodded slightly. Understand what? Why this is happening? He leaned back slightly in his chair. That is a question with many answers. Then give me one. There was a brief silence. Then he spoke. Because you said yes. Amara frowned slightly. That is not the reason. He gave a faint smile. It is one of them. Amara felt frustration rise. You had a choice too. Yes. Then why me? He tilted his head slightly. Why not you? That answer did not satisfy her. She took a step closer. You do not know me. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that made her pause. I know enough. Amara's brows pulled together. What does that mean? He did not answer directly. Instead, he leaned forward slightly. Tomorrow, everything will change for you. I know. Do you? The question was simple, but it carried something deeper. Amara did not respond. He continued. This life you are stepping into. It is not simple. I did not expect it to be. He nodded slowly. Good. Silence filled the room again. Then Amara asked the question that had been sitting inside her since she arrived. Are you really blind? The words came out before she could stop them. The room went still. Chief Adewale did not move. For a moment, there was no reaction. Then, slowly, a faint smile appeared on his lips. Why would you ask that? Amara hesitated. Something about you feels. She stopped. Different. He let out a soft breath. Appearances can be misleading. That did not answer her question. Amara held her ground. He turned his face slightly, his unfocused eyes settling in her direction. Does it matter? The question caught her off guard. Amara opened her mouth slightly, then closed it again. She did not have an answer. He leaned back again. Get some rest, Amara. Tomorrow will be a long day. Amara stood there for a moment longer. There was something in that room she could not explain. Something that did not fit. Finally, she turned and walked toward the door. As she reached it, his voice stopped her. Amara. She paused. Do not be afraid. She did not turn back. Because fear was already there. And it was not going anywhere. She opened the door and stepped out. The hallway felt different now. Everything felt different. Tomorrow, she would become his wife. But tonight, something else had settled in her mind. A question. One that refused to leave. And somewhere deep inside, a quiet feeling began to grow. The feeling that the man she was about to marry was not who he claimed to be. Morning arrived with noise. Not the usual sounds Amara was used to, not the distant calls of traders or the rough movement of life in her old neighborhood. This was different. Controlled movement. Coordinated voices. Soft footsteps that still carried urgency. She woke up before anyone knocked on her door. For a moment, she did not remember where she was. The bed beneath her was too soft. The air was too still. The silence too organized. Then it all came back at once. Today. The word sat heavily in her chest. Amara slowly sat up, her body stiff from a night that had given her no real rest. Her eyes moved across the room. Everything was exactly as it had been left. Nothing out of place. Nothing disturbed. It did not feel like a place meant for living. It felt like a place meant for events. And today, she was the event. A knock came on the door. Amara did not answer immediately. The knock came again, softer this time. Madam, Kemi's voice came from outside. It is time. Amara closed her eyes briefly, then spoke. Come in. The door opened gently. Kemi entered, followed by the same women from the day before. They carried more boxes. More fabrics. More things meant to transform her into something she no longer recognized. Good morning, Kemi said, her tone calm, professional. Amara nodded faintly. The women moved quickly. One opened the wardrobe. Another set items on the dressing table. Everything was done with quiet efficiency. Amara stood slowly from the bed. The transformation began again. Water was brought. Her face was cleaned. Her hair adjusted carefully. Her body moved and positioned as if she were not fully in control of it. No one asked her how she felt. No one needed to. Time moved quickly. Before she could fully process it, she was seated in front of the mirror again. This time, the changes were more deliberate. Her hair was styled with precision. Her face was shaped with makeup that softened and highlighted at the same time. Jewelry was added, one piece at a time, each one heavier than the last. Amara watched herself disappear. Not physically. But slowly. The girl who had stood in front of this same mirror the day before was fading. In her place was someone else. Someone prepared. Someone expected. Someone chosen. When they brought out the wedding attire, the room grew quieter. Even the women seemed to slow down. The fabric was rich, detailed, carefully designed. It was beautiful in a way that demanded attention. Amara did not react. She simply stood there as they helped her into it. Layer after layer. Piece by piece. Until there was nothing left of the life she had known. When they finished, Kemi stepped back. She studied Amara for a moment. Then she nodded. It is time. Amara stood still. Her heart was beating fast now. Not from excitement. From something else. Something heavier. Outside, the sound of drums began. Soft at first. Then louder. Rhythmic. Traditional. It filled the air, announcing something important. Announcing her. Kemi stepped closer. They are waiting. Amara took a breath. It did not help. She turned slowly toward the door. Each step felt heavier than the last. The hallway was already filled with people. Staff moved quickly, adjusting small details. Voices whispered. Footsteps echoed. No one looked at her directly for too long. But everyone knew. She walked forward, guided gently by Kemi. The closer they got, the louder the sounds became. Voices. Music. Movement. The large doors at the end of the hallway stood open. Beyond them, the ceremony was already alive. Guests filled the space. Bright colors. Rich fabrics. Laughter. Conversations. All of it stopped the moment she appeared. Silence fell, not completely, but enough to be felt. All eyes turned to her. Amara felt it immediately. The weight of being seen. Judged. Measured. She kept walking. Her step steady, even if her heart was not. At the front, the elders sat. Respected figures. Watching closely. And beside them. Him. Chief Adewale. He was already seated. Dressed in traditional attire that matched the importance of the day. His posture was calm. His face unreadable. And his eyes. Still unfocused. Still distant. Amara stopped a few steps away. For a moment, everything felt quiet again. Even the music seemed to fade. She looked at him. He did not look back. Or at least, that was how it appeared. The ceremony began. Voices spoke. Words were exchanged. Traditions followed. Amara heard them, but they did not fully stay in her mind. It felt like she was moving through something that had already been decided long before she arrived. At one point, they asked her to step forward. She did. They asked her to kneel. She did. They placed something in her hands. She held it. They told her what to say. She repeated it. Her voice was steady. Even if she did not feel steady inside. When it was his turn, Chief Adewale spoke clearly. His voice carried. Strong. Certain. There was no hesitation in him. No doubt. The contrast between them was clear. She was being pulled into something. He was already standing inside it. Time moved. The ceremony continued. At one moment, their hands were brought together. Amara felt it. His hand. Warm. Firm. Not weak. Not uncertain. For a brief second, her breath caught. Something about that touch did not match the image she had built in her mind. But the moment passed. The voices continued. The final words were spoken. And just like that, it was done. The crowd reacted. Music returned. Voices rose. Laughter. Celebration. But for Amara, everything felt distant. Muted. As if she was standing behind something invisible, watching her own life happen. Kemi leaned in slightly. It is done, she whispered. Amara did not respond. Her eyes remained forward. Chief Adewale stood slowly. Staff moved closer, ready to assist him. But he lifted a hand slightly. He did not need them. Amara noticed. A small detail. But it stayed. He turned slightly in her direction. Even without focused eyes, his presence felt direct. "Come," he said quietly. Amara followed. They walked away from the crowd together. The celebration continued behind them, growing louder as they moved further away. The hallway swallowed the noise. Silence returned. They walked side by side. Not touching. Not speaking. Just moving. Until they reached a door. A large one. Closed. Chief Adewale stopped. Amara stopped beside him. For a moment, neither moved. Then he spoke. "This is your room now." "Our room." The word settled between them. Amara felt it. Heavy. Real. He reached for the door. Opened it. The room inside was different from the one she had stayed in before. Larger. More personal. Less prepared. More lived in. He stepped inside. Amara followed. The door closed behind them. And just like that, they were alone. The noise. The people. The ceremony. All gone. Only silence remained. Amara stood near the door, her body tense. Chief Adewale moved further into the room. His steps were steady. Confident. Too confident. He stopped near the center. For a moment, he said nothing. Then, slowly, he turned. Not in the uncertain way of someone who could not see, but in a way that felt precise. Amara's breath slowed. Something shifted. He took a step forward. Then another. Closer. And closer. Until the distance between them was small. Too small. Amara's heart began to race. Her mind moved quickly. Something was wrong. Something did not match. Then it happened. He stopped. And for the first time, his eyes. Focused. Direct. Looking straight at her. Clear. Sharp. Seen. Amara froze. Her body went still. The silence inside the room did not feel normal. It was not the kind of silence that came from peace. It was the kind that came from something breaking, something shifting so suddenly that the mind could not catch up fast enough. Amara did not move. Her eyes stayed locked on his. Not the empty, unfocused eyes she had seen before. Not the distant look she had tried to understand. These eyes were different. Alive. Sharp. Watching her. Seeing her. Her breath became uneven. For a moment, her body refused to react. It was as if her mind had not yet given permission for movement. Everything inside her was trying to process what had just happened. This man. The man she had just married. The man who had been presented to her as blind. Was standing in front of her, looking directly at her. Seeing everything. Amara took a small step back. Then another. Her hand reached behind her until it found the door. She held onto it, as if she needed something solid to stop herself from falling. "You." The word came out weak, almost broken. He did not interrupt. He did not look away. He simply watched her. "You can see." The statement came slowly, like each word had to push through something heavy. He nodded once. Yes. No denial. No hesitation. Just truth. Amara felt something rise inside her chest. It was not just shock. It was something stronger. Something sharper. Anger. "You lied to me." Her voice grew louder now, steadier. He did not flinch. "Yes." The calmness in his response made it worse. Amara let out a breath that almost turned into a laugh, but it carried no humor. "So everything was a lie." "No." The word came firmly. "Not everything." Amara shook her head quickly. "Do not say that. Do not stand there and act like this is small." Her hands were trembling now, but she did not try to hide it. "You knew what I believed. You knew what I was told. And you said nothing." He took a step closer. Amara stepped back immediately. "Do not come closer." He stopped. The distance between them remained, but the tension did not. "I was going to tell you." "When?" He paused. "Tonight." Amara let out a sharp breath. "After the wedding." "Yes." "After everything was already done." His silence confirmed it. Amara's grip on the door tightened. So you thought it would be easier that way? No. Then what did you think? He looked at her, his expression calm but serious. I thought you deserved the truth from me. Not from anyone else. Amara stared at him. You mean after I had no choice left? He did not respond immediately. That is how it looks. That is what it is. Her voice was firm now. You took my choice away. The words hung between them. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he said quietly. You still have choices. Amara shook her head. Do not say that. Not now. Her chest rose and fell quickly. I stood there today. I said those words. I followed everything they told me to do. And the whole time, I did not even know who I was marrying. You knew enough. No. Her voice cut through the air. I knew what I was told. That is not the same thing. He watched her closely. What would you have done if you knew? Amara did not hesitate. I would have walked away. The answer came quickly. Honest. Clear. He nodded slightly. That is what I thought. Amara froze for a moment. Then her eyes narrowed. So this was a trap? No. Then what was it? He took a breath. It was a test. The word landed hard. Amara's expression changed immediately. A test. Her voice dropped, but the anger in it did not. You tested me. Yes. Like I am some kind of experiment. No. Then what do you call it? He held her gaze. A way to see the truth. Amara let out a bitter laugh. The truth. She shook her head. You do not get the truth by lying. His expression remained steady. Sometimes you do. Amara stared at him, disbelief clear in her face. That makes no sense. He stepped slightly to the side, giving her space, but not breaking the connection between them. Every woman who came before you knew exactly who I was. Amara said nothing. They saw the house. The money. The power. He continued. They said yes before I even finished asking. Amara's jaw tightened. And that makes you think I am different. You said yes without seeing anything. The word slowed her thoughts for a moment. She did not answer immediately. You did not see this house. You did not see my name. You did not see what I could give you. He took another slow step, careful not to move too close. You said yes because you had to. Amara's eyes flickered slightly. That is not the same. It is not. He agreed. But it told me something. What? He looked at her steadily. That you are not driven by greed. Amara felt the anger inside her shift slightly. Not disappear. Just move. You think this makes it better? No. Then what is the point? He was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that caught her off guard. I needed to find someone real. The words were simple. But they carried weight. Amara's expression softened for just a second, then hardened again. So you decided to lie to find that? Yes. The honesty in his voice was almost unsettling. Amara looked away, shaking her head. This is wrong. Yes. He did not argue. That surprised her. She looked back at him. Then why do it? He paused. Because the truth, without a test, has never been enough in my world. Amara did not fully understand what he meant, but she felt the weight behind it. Silence filled the room again. But this time, it was different. Less explosive. More heavy. Amara slowly moved away from the door. She needed space to think. To breathe. She walked toward the other side of the room, her steps slower now. Her mind was still racing, but the sharp edge of her anger had softened slightly. Not gone. Just less wired. Behind her, he remained where he was. He did not follow. He did not push. After a while, she spoke again. So what happens now? Her voice was quieter. More controlled. He answered calmly. Now you know the truth. Amara turned slightly. And you decide what you want to do with it. She frowned. What does that mean? It means you are not trapped here. The words felt strange. Amara stared at him. That is not true. It is. No. Her voice rose slightly again. My family. The debt. Everything. It has been handled. She blinked. What? The debt is gone. Amara's body went still. What do you mean? It is cleared. Her mind struggled to catch up. Completely. She shook her head slowly. That does not change anything. He did not argue. No. It changes everything. Amara's voice was firm. I am still here. Yes. And I did not choose this. He watched her closely. Then choose now. The word settled between them. Amara's breath slowed. Choose. The word felt unfamiliar in this situation. You are free to leave. Her eyes widened slightly. If you want to. Silence. Deep. Heavy. Real. Amara stared at him, searching his face for something. A lie. A trick. Anything. But she did not see it. Only calm. Only certainty. You would let me go? Yes. Just like that. Yes. Amara's thoughts moved quickly again. If she walked out of this room, what would happen? Where would she go? What would she return to? Her old life. Her small house. Her sick mother. But the debt was gone. That part was true. She looked down briefly. Then back at him. Why? The question came quietly. Why give me that choice now? He answered without hesitation. Because now you know who I am. Amara held his gaze. And if I leave? Then you leave knowing the truth. No lies. No secrets. The room felt still again. But this time, it was not suffocating. It was waiting. Amara took a slow breath. Her heart was still racing, but her thoughts were beginning to settle into something clearer. This was not what she expected. Not even close. She had prepared herself for a life of silence. Of endurance. Of survival. But this was different. Too different. And she did not yet know what to do with it. She turned slightly, walking toward the window. The light outside had begun to soften. Evening was approaching. Her reflection stared back at her in the glass. Still dressed as a bride. Still standing in a life she did not plan. But now there was something else. A choice. And for the first time since everything began, Amara did not feel completely powerless. Behind her, he remained silent. Waiting. Not forcing. Not controlling. Just waiting. And that, more than anything else, unsettled her the most. The room did not feel the same anymore. Nothing had changed physically. The same walls, the same furniture, the same quiet air. But something invisible had shifted, something that could not be seen but could be felt in every breath Amara took. A choice. The word kept returning, steady and persistent, as if it refused to leave her alone. She stood by the window, her fingers resting lightly on the edge of the frame. Outside, the compound was still active. Staff moved quietly. Cars passed through the gates. The word continued without hesitation. Inside her, nothing felt steady. Behind her, Chief Adewale remained where he was. He had not moved closer. He had not spoken again. His silence was not empty. It was deliberate. It gave her space, but it also placed something on her shoulders. Responsibility. Amara turned slowly. You expect me to decide now? Her voice was low, careful. He looked at her. No. The answer came calmly. Then when? When you are ready. Amara let out a quiet breath. That could take time. I am not in a hurry. She studied his face. He meant it. That was what unsettled her. Everything about this situation should have felt controlled, forced, planned. But now, it felt open. Too open. Why are you doing this? The question came again, softer this time. He did not answer immediately. Because I do not want a prisoner. The words were simple, but they carried weight. Amara looked away. That is what I thought I was becoming. He nodded slightly. I know. Silence followed. Amara moved away from the window, walking slowly across the room. Her steps were steady, but her thoughts were not. She had imagined many things about this night. Fear. Resignation. Endurance. But not this. Not being told she could walk away. Not being given space. Not being seen like this. It made everything harder. She stopped near the center of the room. If I stay. Her voice was quiet. What does that mean? He answered without hesitation. It means you stay because you want to. Amara frowned slightly. And if I do not want to? Then you do not stay. The simplicity of it felt strange. Nothing in her life had ever been that simple. You make it sound easy. It is not easy. He agreed. But it is clear. Amara let out a slow breath. Clear. Yes. She shook her head slightly. Nothing about this is clear. He watched her quietly. Amara's eyes moved around the room again. Everything here belonged to him. This life. This space. This control. And yet, he was offering her something she had not expected. Freedom. But freedom also came with weight. Because now, whatever she chose would be hers. She turned back to him. Why me? The question came again, but this time, it carried something different. Not just anger. Curiosity. He paused before answering. Because you did not pretend. Amara frowned. I did not have the chance to pretend. Exactly. She held his gaze. You think that makes me different? I know it does. His voice was steady. Certain. Amara did not respond immediately. She was not used to being seen this way. Not as someone useful. Not as someone needed. But as someone chosen. It made her uncomfortable. You do not know me. He gave a slight nod. Then let me. The words were not forceful. They were not demanding. They were offered. Amara felt something shift again inside her. A small movement. Not trust. Not yet. But something softer than before. She walked slowly toward the chair near the bed and sat down. Her body felt tired now. Not just physically. Everything had happened too quickly. Too much. She rested her hands on her lap, staring down at them. If I stay, she said quietly, her voice almost lost in the room, it will not be because of your money. I know. If I stay, it will not be because of what you can give me. I know. She looked up at him. And it will not be because I have nowhere else to go. He held her gaze. Then it will be because you choose it. Amara studied him for a moment. He was not smiling. He was not trying to convince her. He was simply present. That, more than anything, made it difficult. She leaned back slightly in the chair. What kind of man does this? The question slipped out before she could stop it. He tilted his head slightly. What kind of man? Who lies like that, and then gives everything back? He did not answer immediately. Then he said quietly. A man who has learned the cost of both. Amara did not fully understand, but she felt there was more behind those words. She looked away again. The room grew quieter. Outside, the light continued to fade. Evening was settling in. Time was moving. And with it, something inside her was slowly changing. Not completely. Not fully. But enough to make her pause. Enough to make her think. She stood up slowly. I am not leaving tonight. The words came out before she fully thought them through. He nodded. I understand. That did not mean she was staying. But it also did not mean she was leaving. It meant she needed time. More time than she had been given before. She walked toward the wardrobe. I need to change. He stepped back slightly, giving her space. Of course. Amara paused for a moment. Then she said something without turning. Do not lie to me again. His answer came immediately. I will not. She nodded slightly. That was enough for now. She disappeared into the dressing area. The sound of fabric shifting filled the quiet room. Chief Adewale remained where he was, his eyes resting on the space she had just left. For the first time that day, he let out a slow breath. Not of relief, but of something close to it. Moments later, Amara returned. She was no longer dressed as a bride. The heavy layers were gone. The jewelry removed. She looked more like herself. But not completely. Something had changed. Something that would not go back. She walked past him without speaking and moved toward the other side of the room. There was another door. She stopped there. Is there another room? He nodded. Yes. You can use it. She opened the door. Inside was a smaller space, still comfortable, still well prepared. She stepped in, then paused. For a brief second, she looked back at him. Their eyes met again. This time, the moment felt different. Less sharp. Less guarded. Still uncertain. But not as distant. Then she stepped inside and closed the door. The sound echoed softly. Chief Adewale remained alone in the larger room. The silence returned. But it was no longer the same silence as before. Because now, there was something else in it. Something new. Not agreement. Not understanding. But the beginning of something that could grow. Behind the closed door, Amara leaned against the wall. Her body finally gave in to the exhaustion she had been holding back. She closed her eyes. Everything inside her was still moving. Still shifting. But one thing had become clear. Her life was no longer being decided for her. And that truth was just as frightening as everything that had come before. The morning did not come with peace. Amara opened her eyes slowly, her body still heavy from the long night. For a few seconds, she did not move. The unfamiliar ceiling above her reminded her immediately that she was no longer in her old home. Everything here still felt new, but not in a way that brought comfort. She turned slightly on the bed. The smaller room was quiet, untouched, as if it had been waiting for her long before she arrived. The sheets were smooth, the air cool, the silence complete. But inside her, nothing was quiet. The truth from the night before had not faded. If anything, it had settled deeper. He is not blind. The thought came again, steady, real. And yet, he had given her something she had not expected. A choice. Amara sat up slowly, placing her feet on the floor. Her body felt stiff, her mind still carrying everything that had happened. She rubbed her hands together briefly, then stood. She needed to move. To breathe. To understand where she was. She walked toward the door and opened it gently. The larger room was empty. Chief Adewale was not there. The bed had not been touched. Everything looked exactly as it had been the night before. For a moment, she stood still, her eyes scanning the space. Something about his absence made her feel both relieved and unsettled at the same time. She stepped out into the hallway. The mansion was already awake. Soft footsteps echoed from different directions. Voices moved quietly through the corridors. Staff carried trays, cleaned surfaces, adjusted things that already looked perfect. The house was alive. But it did not feel warm. As Amara walked slowly, she noticed something. Eyes. People looked at her. Not openly. Not directly. But she could feel it. Quick glances. Whispers that stopped when she passed. She kept her head forward, her step steady. This is your place now. The thought came, but it did not feel true yet. At the end of the hallway, she saw Kemi approaching. Good morning, madam, Kemi said gently. Amara nodded. Good morning. Kemi studied her face for a moment, as if trying to read something. Did you sleep well? Amara hesitated slightly. Enough. Kemi gave a small nod. Breakfast is ready. Would you like to eat now? Amara considered it, then nodded. Yes. Kemi turned and led the way. They walked through another part of the house, one Amara had not seen before. The dining area was large, with a long table that could hold many people, but only one place was set. At the head of the table. Amara paused. He is not here, she said quietly. Kemi shook her head. The chief has already eaten. Amara felt a small shift inside her. Of course. Everything here had its order. She walked to the table and sat down. The chair felt too big. Too formal. A staff member stepped forward and began placing dishes in front of her. The food looked good. Better than anything she had eaten in a long time. But her appetite was not there. Still, she picked up the spoon. She needed strength. As she ate, her eyes moved around the room again. Everything felt watched. Not in a dangerous way, but in a way that reminded her she was being observed. Measured. She lowered her gaze again. After a few minutes, she stopped. "That is enough," she said quietly. The staff nodded and began clearing the table. Kemi stepped closer. "There are some people who would like to meet you today." Amara looked up. "Who?" "Members of the family. Close associates." Amara's chest tightened slightly. Family. The word carried weight. She was not ready for that. "Do I have a choice?" Kemi hesitated. "It is expected." Amara nodded slowly. "Of course it is." She stood up. "Then let us do it." Kemi gave a small nod. They walked back into the hallway. The mansion seemed even larger now. Every turn led to another space. Another part of a life she did not understand yet. They stopped in front of a large sitting room. Voices could be heard from inside. Not quiet voices. Confident ones. Laughter. Conversation. Kemi turned to her. "They are inside." Amara took a slow breath. Then she nodded. Kemi opened the door. The room fell silent. Just like before. Amara stepped in. Several people were seated. Men and women. Dressed well. Carrying themselves with confidence. Eyes turned toward her immediately. The silence lasted only a moment. Then one of the women spoke. "So this is her." The tone was not warm. Not welcoming. Amara stood still. Kemi stepped slightly forward. "This is Madam Amara. The new wife of Chief Adewale." The words settled in the room. A man leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Young." Another woman let out a soft laugh. "Very young." Amara felt the weight of their words, but she did not react. She had learned that already. Not every comment deserved a response. One of the older women stood up slowly. She walked toward Amara, her steps measured. She stopped just in front of her. Her eyes moved over Amara's face, her clothes, everything. Then she spoke. "Do you know where you are?" Amara held her gaze. "Yes." "Do you?" The question was sharp. Amara did not answer immediately. The woman continued. "This house is not for the weak." Amara felt something rise inside her. "Then I will learn to be strong." The woman's lips curved slightly. "We will see." She turned and walked back to her seat. The tension in the room did not leave. Another voice spoke. From the corner. A woman. Her tone softer, but still carrying something underneath. "You are lucky." Amara turned slightly. "Lucky. To be chosen." Amara held her gaze. The woman smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. "Many would have taken your place without hesitation." Amara said nothing. She did not feel lucky. Not yet. Another man spoke. "Let us hope she understands what that means." The words carried a warning. Amara felt it clearly. This was not just a house. It was a place of power. Of expectations. Of rules she did not know yet. Kemi stepped closer to her. "That will be all for now." The statement was polite, but firm. It gave Amara a way out. She took it. She nodded once, then turned and walked toward the door. No one stopped her. But she could still feel their eyes on her back as she left. The door closed behind her. The hallway felt quieter again. But not lighter. Amara let out a slow breath. That was only the beginning. Kemi walked beside her. "You handled that well." Amara did not respond. She was still thinking. Still feeling. After a moment, she spoke. "They do not accept me." Kemi was quiet for a second. "Acceptance takes time." Amara shook her head slightly. "Or it may never come." Kemi did not argue. They continued walking. As they turned a corner, Amara stopped suddenly. At the far end of the hallway, she saw him. Chief Adewale. He was not alone. A man stood beside him, speaking quietly. Chief Adewale listened, His posture relaxed. Then he said something. And the man nodded quickly. Respectfully. There was no sign of weakness. No hesitation. No blindness. He was fully aware. Fully present. Amara watched for a moment. Then he turned slightly. And their eyes met. Again. Direct. Clear. Seen. This time, she did not look away. For a brief moment, nothing else existed. Then the man beside him stepped away. Chief Adewale began walking toward her. His step steady. Confident. Real. Amara felt her heart beat slightly faster. Not from fear. Something else. Something she did not yet understand. He stopped in front of her. How was your morning? His voice was calm. Amara held his gaze. Interesting. The hallway grew quieter after their conversation, but the silence no longer felt empty. It felt like something waiting to be uncovered. Amara stood still for a moment, her eyes still fixed on him. There was something different now. Not just because she knew he could see, but because she had started to realize that everything around her was built on layers she had not yet understood. You said you would tell me the truth, she said, her voice calm but firm. Chief Adewale studied her face for a moment, as if measuring how much she was ready to hear. Yes. Then start now. He nodded slightly, then turned. Walk with me. Amara hesitated for a brief second, then followed. They moved down the hallway together, side by side. Not too close, not too distant. The space between them felt intentional, like something neither of them wanted to rush. They passed through another section of the mansion, one quieter than the rest. The walls here were different. Fewer decorations. More space. It felt less like a place for display and more like a place for thinking. He stopped in front of a door. This is where I spend most of my time. He opened it. The study. Amara stepped inside. The room carried a different kind of presence. Books lined the shelves from floor to ceiling. A large desk stood near the window. Papers were neatly arranged. Nothing looked out of place, but everything looked used. This room felt real. Not like the others. She walked a few steps further in. He closed the door behind them. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then he moved toward the desk and rested his hand on it. What do you want to know? Amara turned to face him. Everything. He gave a small nod. Then we start from the beginning. Amara crossed her arms slightly, preparing herself. You are not blind. No. That we know. She took a small breath. Why pretend? He looked at her. Because I needed to see people clearly. Amara frowned. You could already see them. Not like that. He shook his head slightly. When people think you cannot see them, they show you who they really are. Amara paused. The words made sense, but they also carried something deeper. You did this for how long? Yes. Her eyes widened slightly. Yes. Yes. Amara let out a quiet breath. That was not a small decision. No, it was not. She studied him. And no one knew. Some did. Who? People I trust. Amara nodded slowly. And the others? They believed what they saw. Amara looked down briefly, thinking. So all those women before me. They saw a blind man with money. Yes. And they said yes. Without hesitation. She looked back up. And you turned them away? Every time. Amara's expression tightened slightly. Then why did you not turn me away? He did not answer immediately. Then he said quietly. Because you were not like them. Amara shook her head slightly. You keep saying that. Because it is true. She walked a few steps closer. No. You did not choose me because I am different. You chose me because I had no choice. The words came sharp. Honest. He did not react immediately. Then he nodded. That is part of it. Amara's eyes narrowed. Part of it. Yes. She waited. He continued. But you still had a moment. A moment where you could have refused. Amara almost laughed. You call that a real choice? It was enough. She stared at him. Enough for what? To see your heart. Amara felt that same shift again. Not comfort. Not trust. But something that made her pause instead of react. She turned away slightly, walking toward the bookshelf. Her fingers brushed against the spines of the books. You built all this from nothing. The question came without her planning it. He watched her. No. Amara stopped. No. He stepped closer, but kept his distance. I inherited some of it. Her brows pulled together. Some. Yes. She turned to face him again. Then the rest. I built. Amara nodded slowly. And the people in this house. They work for you. Yes. They depend on you. Yes. She took a breath. And the ones in that room earlier. Family. He nodded. Some of them. Amara crossed her arms again. They do not like me. No. He did not deny it. Why? Because they do not understand you. Or because they think I do not belong here. Both. Amara let out a quiet breath. At least that part is clear. He watched her carefully. You do not need their approval. Amara shook her head. Maybe not. But I need to understand where I am standing. He nodded. That is fair. She walked slowly back toward the center of the room. Then tell me this. He waited. Why did you agree to marry me? Not test me. Not observe me. Marry me. The question hung in the air. He did not answer immediately. Amara waited. Finally, he spoke. Because I saw something I could not ignore. Amara's expression did not change. What? Strength. She almost dismissed it, but something in his tone stopped her. You did not break. She frowned slightly. I had no time to break. Exactly. She looked at him. You stood in something you did not choose, and you still stood. Amara felt those words settle in a place she had not expected. She looked away briefly. That does not mean I wanted it. I know. He said it quietly. Then why still marry me? He held her gaze. Because I believed you could stand beside me. The words were not loud. But they carried weight. Amara did not respond immediately. Her thoughts moved slowly now. Not rushing. Not reacting. Processing. She walked toward the window. Outside, the sky was bright, but the light felt softer than before. Everything here feels like a test. He did not argue. In a way, it is. She turned slightly. Then what happens if I fail? He looked at her steadily. Then you leave. Simple. Clear. Amara shook her head slightly. You say it like it is easy. It is not easy. He stepped closer, just enough for his presence to be felt. But it is honest. Amara studied him again. There was something about him that did not match the stories she had built in her mind. He was not soft. He was not weak. But he was not what she had feared either. That confused her more than anything. She looked down at her hands. You changed everything. The words came quietly. He did not deny it. Yes. Amara lifted her gaze again. Then help me understand it. He nodded. I will. Not all at once. She gave a small nod. That is fine. Silence settled between them again. But it was not heavy. It was steady. Amara took a slow breath. She was still inside something she did not fully understand. Still surrounded by people who were watching her. Still standing in a life that had been forced on her. But now, she knew more. Not everything. But enough to realize one thing. This was not just about survival anymore. This was about something else. Something deeper. And whatever it was, she was already part of it. The house was quieter than it had ever been. Not because people had left, but because something had changed. The tension that once filled every corner, every hallway, every silent glance, had begun to fade. It did not disappear completely, but it no longer controlled the air. Amara stood by the balcony again. The same place she had stood on her first day in the mansion. The same railing. The same view. But she was no longer the same person. Back then, she had felt trapped. Now, she stood there by choice. Her hands rested lightly on the rail as she watched the compound below. Staff moved with purpose, but there was something different in the way they carried themselves around her now. Respect. Not forced. Not fearful. But earned. It had not been easy. Nothing about the past weeks had been easy. The whispers had not stopped immediately. The looks, the quiet judgments, the questions about who she was and why she had been chosen. Every step she took had been watched, measured, tested. But she had not stepped back. She had not hidden. She had learned. Slowly. Carefully. She had listened more than she spoke. She had observed more than she reacted. And when she finally spoke, she spoke with clarity. That was what changed everything. Behind her, the door opened softly. She did not turn immediately. She already knew who it was. "You always come here in the morning," he said. His voice was calm, familiar now. Amara allowed a small smile to form. "It helps me think." Chief Adewale stepped closer, stopping beside her. The distance between them was no longer filled with uncertainty. It was filled with something else. Understanding. He rested his hands lightly on the railing. "You have been busy." Amara glanced at him briefly. "So have you?" He gave a faint nod. "That is true." There was a moment of silence, but it was comfortable. Not forced. Not heavy. Then he spoke again. "They are starting to accept you." Amara looked ahead. "Some of them." "That is enough?" She nodded slightly. "It is." She had faced them. Every single one. The woman who had questioned her strength now greeted her with quiet respect. The man who had doubted her now listened when she spoke. Even the whispers had changed. They were no longer filled with doubt, but curiosity. Who is she, really? Amara had answered that question without words. By staying. By standing. By choosing. She turned slightly toward him. "And you?" He looked at her. "What about me?" "You never told them the truth." He held her gaze. "They know enough." Amara studied his face. "You still keep your secrets." He gave a small, almost unnoticeable smile. "Some things are not meant for everyone." Amara nodded. She understood that now. She turned her gaze back outside. "There is something I need to say." He waited. "I stayed." "Yes." He did not interrupt. "But not because I had no choice." He nodded. "I know." Amara took a slow breath. "I stayed because I wanted to understand." "And now?" She paused. "Now I do." The words were simple. But they carried everything. He watched her carefully. "And what do you understand?" Amara turned fully toward him. "That this life is not about what you have. It is about what you build." He said nothing. She continued. "And that people here, they follow strength. Not just power." He nodded slowly. "Yes." Amara's voice softened slightly. "And I understand you." He held her gaze. That part surprised him. "You do?" Amara nodded. "You did not lie because you enjoy control." She paused. "You lied because you have been surrounded by people who only saw what they could take from you." Silence. Deep. Real. He did not deny it. She stepped a little closer. "And you wanted something real." He looked at her. "I did." Amara's eyes did not move from his. "And now you have it." The words settled between them. He studied her face. For a moment, there was no response. Then he spoke quietly. "And you?" Amara tilted her head slightly. "What about me? Do you have what you want?" The question was simple. But it carried everything. Amara did not answer immediately. Instead, she looked out again. The world beyond the gates. The life she once knew. The life she could have returned to. It was still there. Waiting. But it no longer pulled her the same way. She turned back to him. "Yes." The answer came calmly. Certain. Not rushed. Not forced. "Yes." He held her gaze for a moment longer. Then he nodded. That is enough. Silence followed. But it was not empty. It was full. Full of everything they had walked through. The lies. The truth. The choices. The change. Amara rested her hands back on the railing. There is something else. He waited. I want to do more. His expression shifted slightly. More. She nodded. There are people like me. The words came steady. People who are forced into choices. People who feel like they have no way out. He watched her closely. And I want to help them. The idea had been growing inside her for days. Now it was clear. He did not hesitate. Then we will. Amara looked at him. We. Yes. Not you alone. The word settled deeply. Amara allowed a small smile. That sounds like a plan. He gave a slight nod. It is. The sun rose higher. Light filled the space around them. The house, once heavy with judgment and quiet tension, now felt different. Not perfect. But real. Amara stood there, no longer as someone who had been brought in, but as someone who had taken her place. Not by force. But by choice. And that changed everything. She was no longer the girl who had been told what her life would be. She was the woman who decided it. And that was the truth no one could take from her. Thank you for staying with this story from beginning to end. Your time means everything. If this story touched you, moved you, or made you feel something real, support this journey by leaving a comment, sharing your thoughts, and letting others discover it too. Do not forget to like and subscribe so you never miss the next powerful story. Your support keeps these stories alive.